Blancpain is turning Japanese tonight. It's round 8 of season 4 of the 2016 season, and the championship now heads to the legendary Suzuka circuit. High-speed corners, lots of curves, and some fantastic racing set here. It's the only stop on the calendar in Asia, and it's coming up live on iRacing.com and also Racebot TV after these messages. So stick with us, and we'll be back in 2. Welcome to Friday Night Prime Time on iRacing Live and Racebot TV. Round 8 of Season 4 of the 2016 iRacing Blancpain Sprint Series takes us to the one and only stop in Asia on the calendar, but it's an awesome one. It is the legendary Suzuka circuit. Lots of high-speed corners, and racing should be at a premium here. Glad you could join us. Scott Woodward's here on commentary alongside Randy Chenwith, with Hugo Luis on cameras as well. And Randy, after an epic race last time at Road America, with the balance of performance being a key talking point here, with a circuit like this where it's aero-focused, it could be anyone's guess, literally, with how even the cars are right now.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, we saw the big balance of performance change last week at Road America, and this week iRacing came out, they reverted some of those changes, and we're seeing a much more balanced balance of performance now. This is definitely still going to be a very aero-focused racetrack, so look for BMWs, look for Mercedes to even run strong, but don't count out the Audis, and don't count out the 4 GTs as well.
Frederick Rasmussen, Dennis Grabowski and Co are all back once again. They're the usual suspects, the ones you'll be seeing up at the front of the race. We're currently up into qualifying right now as the session runs through, and as the cars now head out to do their only sort of couple of laps for qualifying, what sort of trends are we going to be seeing here? Because it's so even, is it going to be the case that now it's really primarily focused on who's going to get the best out of their setup and who can really just drive the circuit the hardest, or is there a little bit more to that? Is strategy and possibly pit fuel strategy going to play a little bit more of a crucial part on a circuit like this?
Well, the couple races I've done, it seems like you can save about an extra lap or so if you have the draft, but I mean, it's definitely going to be, the balance is looking much better. It's hard to say. It's only been about a day or so. This is the only circuit we've seen it, and it is somewhat up in the air in terms of if someone finds something that makes one of these cars really tick extraordinarily quickly, whether or not something happens. Looking at the qualifying now, the front engine cars are looking very strong, the BMW and the Mercedes, but those are also the two cars that are the best aerodynamically, and a circuit like Suzuka, I'm not surprised those two cars are qualifying well.
Looking at the qualifying time so far, it is that man once again, Frederick Rasmussen, on provisional pole position. The only man to have set a time that's sub 1:57, 1 minute 56.930 to go quickest. Ricardo Castrolado is second, 1:57.193. And then Riley Preston, a much more improved showing from him. Perhaps the balance of performance is working in his favour, 1:57.319 to go third quickest. Looking through the rest of the top 10 again, it is the usual suspects. Bruno De Carmo up in the mix, Dennis Grabowski, Mika Melkilla, Ricardo Ferreira, also Raul Diaga, who was awesome at Le Mans with that fantastic outside pass on the last lap, and a couple more drivers moving to the field. Other drivers to watch out for in the mix as well, Neta Nascimento, Timu Ivanen, also we've got Ruki Alatalo in there too. Juha-Pekka Lamy in the mix as well, down at the moment in 22nd position. So a lot of very talented drivers, again, as you'd expect. Luigi Nespolino is also in there too. A 30-car field, but looking down the cars that we've got up in and around the top 10, I mean, we've got Rasmussen and the BMW, and then a nice mix of different makes and models here. So this should hopefully make for a fantastic run as they head downhill towards that first turn for the first time.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun race. Dennis Grabowski is, of course, the best qualified of the non-front engine cars. He's out there in that Audi, interestingly enough. Normally we see him out there in the McLaren, but the McLaren is going to be a car that I think always struggles at a circuit like this, not having the aerodynamics. It's going to be, not the strongest through the likes of 130R and through the S's and even through Spoon. So I think switching out of the McLaren, possibly a good choice.
There are relatively, even though it is a very high-speed circuit, lots of high downforce, etc., it can be tricky sometimes to pass on this circuit. There are only a couple of passing spots that I can personally see down towards turn 1. Potentially, if you're brave enough into 130R, you can sneak a move inside or outside of the Casio triangle and maybe into Spoon Curve as well. You can make a dive into the hairpins. There is quite a few, actually, in hindsight. But especially that run through the S's, that's going to be an all-important sequence of corners, Randy, I'm sure, because it's so high speed, it's so aero-focused, that if you haven't got a good setup there, you can easily lose time to the car in front or leave a guy behind if he's not set up correctly.
Yeah, the main struggle with the S's is just the fact that it is just single file. There's really only one groove through that entire sequence of corners from basically turn 1 all the way up, even through the Degners of turn 8 and 9. It really is just single file, not a lot of room in that racetrack to really run side by side.
Let's see how they'll run side by side up towards turn 1. Let's take you through your grid then for round 8 of season 4 of the 2016 iRacing Blancpain Sprint Series. Their lineup as follows. It is car number 1 in P number 1, Frederick Rasmussen, 156.930 with Ricardo Castroledo alongside him on the front row. Row 2 is Riley Preston and Mika Milkiller ahead of Des Grabowski and Bruno De Carmo. Ricardo Ferreira and Thomas Ahrens are on row 4, and then Raul Diaga and Joni Heikkinen round out the top 10. Nikodem Wisniewski and Timo Eben on the row 6 ahead of Neto Nascimento and Andrea Rodriguez. Ricky Alatalo and Rafael Marquez ahead of Marcus Meyer and Sergei Lorenz. Then Moritz Lona and Bruno Fontalba round out the top 20. Then Ivan Carmona, Juha Pekka-Lamy, Jake Hewlett, Harry Turunen, Juuso Heitila, Julien Offray, Luigi Nespolino, Pavel Herman, Gianni Vecchio and Andy Pers rounding out the 30 cars that are running here, field spread by about 2.5 seconds. So not the biggest of spreads in this one, Randy. So it's a pretty evenly matched field. If you look at the times, pretty much down for about second place. I mean, almost
2 seconds from first to 29th. Yeah, it is a very competitive field. Andy Pers 0.6 off the 29th qualifier, the 59.5 down there in last, but still 29th position of 58.9. Frederick of 56.9, and he's the only driver in those 56s. So it is an extraordinarily tight field.
Yep. Absolutely, we're heading around another 40 minutes of racing around the 17-turn, 3.61 mile Suzuka International Racing Course. It's set in Mie Prefecture in Japan, 17 turns, and we're expecting potentially either 20 or 21 laps here for this race, depending on weather conditions. Lap pit strategy around about lap 13 as the cars head off onto the rolling lap up towards the Casio Triangle to get them started. It's a pretty short run under the safety car. Is Rasmussen going to have it too easy here, or is there anyone who can possibly try and duplicate the victory as it is so close? Who do you think is potentially going to be the one to run away with it, Randy?
I think Frederick is going to have himself a good start, but I think that Ricardo Castroledo will be quick behind. I also have my eyes on Miko Milkilla behind in that Audi, the fastest qualifier. I initially said it was Dennis, but I think Miko nicked him right there in the end, being the best Audi in qualifying.
So, watch for the nearest the pit wall will be Frederick Rasmussen, as you'll see him then on the left in the car number 1, Ricardo Castroledo in car number 2. BMW's on the front row, then Mercedes and Audi and Mercedes. They're bunching up 2 by 2, waiting for the green flag.
Stacking up behind.
And already I think there's a little bit of contact in the background, but we are underway. Round 8 is green at Suzuka, and already Rasmussen sweeps into the lead down towards the first turn, and you can see already Ricardo Castroledo is under attack now from the Mercedes in 3rd position, and that is of Riley Preston up in the mix as well. The field pouring its way through the first couple of corners into the fearsome S's for the first time. A field of 30 GT3 cars snarling their way through. Rasmussen gets the jump, Randy. There's contact just behind between 2 of the BMWs. That was Ricardo Ferreira, and also someone else has spun around and really dropped back down the order. I'm trying to catch who it was, and it was...
another spin in the S's. Nito Nascimento's in this one. There's another BMW off in the grass as well. I'm not sure who that was, but that was a pretty big incident. Thomas Lorenz is in that as well as Ricardo Ferreira. A lot of incidents on this opening lap. People, I think, maybe trying to make up for a little bit of talent, making some spots too early, being over-aggressive.
That's the risk with Suzuka. We said it's a tricky one to overtake, and it is quite a narrow circuit, but the field already up towards the hairpin for the first time. It has caused a couple of holes in the pack as they head up through the 180-degree left-hander. Then they'll charge through the very long curving right-hander back towards the double apex spoon curve. Already Rasmussen has his foot down, trying to increase the lead he's got already on Riccardo Castronedo. It is Riley Preston in third place. Fourth is currently up for grabs between the pair of Audis, but here comes up in fifth position behind. That is Mika Melchella. Super pass around the outside to get Bruno De Carmo and the inside line for the first part of spoon curve. He just simply sailed up to the back and round. He just passed him like he wasn't even there.
Yeah, that was a great move there by Bruno to be able to get by that Audi going into spoon curve on the inside, and that's what we expect to see out of this Mercedes. If they can get the line with the downforce they have, they can hold on to it. And actually, with this new balance of performance trim, the Audis don't have the top end advantage anymore. Not as much anyways. So the McLarens are definitely going to be quicker in a straight line, but your BMWs, your Mercs, and your Audis all relatively equal down these long straights.
Certainly are. Here comes Rasmussen, and he will end the first lap, of course, comfortably in the lead. His customary position at the head of the field, and here's how they come across the line. And it is Rasmussen who leads, Castronedo second place, Preston third, Brogowski fourth, then for Melchella, and then for Bruno De Carmo in sixth position. Then we've got Raul Diago seventh, Timu even up in eighth, Enrique Alatalo ninth in the highest Ford GT, and then Andrea Rodriguez in the Mercedes rounding out the top 10. We've still got Wisniewski 11th, Johnny Hakins into 12th. A lot of Mercedes in the mix down towards the bottom of the top 10. Rafael Marquez is in there as well. Interesting to see where the highest McLaren is in the field, and we can find it.
I don't think there's one
down there.
I don't think there's a single McLaren in this field, and I can't say I'm surprised. Such an aero-focused circuit, you know, it's one of those tracks where no one is going to want to run it. And not to mention, especially after last week where we saw so many people in the Mercedes, I think a lot of people are flocking to that car. Because even right now, even though it isn't the quickest, the Mercedes is a very comfortable car to drive.
Of course, having the engine towards the front, it will help push the front end of the car down. Of course, sometimes nose-heavy cars tend to be a little bit tricky when it comes to handling. But thankfully, with the balance of performance and the characteristics of this circuit, it's helping the front end of the car to push down a bit more, to give it a bit more grip and stability, and therefore helping these cars to run at their best. Then through the right-hander up towards the spoon curve for the second time, Rasmussen across the line at the end of the first lap had a lead of just over 7/10 of a second, so already pulling out quite a decent enough gap in the first lap or so. Castronedo appears to be trying to go with him at this point, but doesn't ultimately have enough pace to start reeling him in. Let's wait for the next couple of laps to tick over to see what the ultimate pace is. Preston's fallen away in third place, and they're starting to stack up for fourth now behind Grabowski. Both, we've got Mika Melchella in the number 11 Mercedes, and then Bruno De Carmo in the number 7 Audi just stacking up behind him. So I wonder, if Preston can't really turn this up here, he's going to have to find himself under attack from 3 different directions by the cars behind him, 4th, 5th and 6th.
Yeah, I mean, Riley needs to reel down that gap to Riccardo Castronedo out in front, but Riccardo and Frederick are doing a great job to be able to stretch this gap. This is also a circuit, Scott, where you don't necessarily want to be just tucked up right beneath the rear wing of someone that's just in front of you. Sometimes it can be beneficial to just sort of let that gap stretch out a little bit and then try to reel it in over the course of this race, because you got to figure, even though you got the long straights that you can work the draft, you have that entire first sector aero dependent, you have 130R. There is quite a lot of aero push in these cars at a circuit like this. Because of that, it can be often the best to let that gap stretch out 7/10 of a second or so and just sort of sit there if you can't really hold on to that gap anyways.
Yeah, I have to agree. Particularly here at the S's Watch, this battle for fourth going on, you know, clean air is key in this point in time to get the most out of the front air, and of course Grabowski's got the cleaner air, whilst got Mika Melchella just holding on just in the turbulent air that's coming off the back of that number 9 Audis. They come back through the first part of the Degner curves. Fantastic double apex right-hander here. They charge their way through under the crossover. It's one of the only circuits in the world that has one. And up towards the hairpin then. This is for the third time of asking then. Under the brakes. Up towards the left hand. They'll turn it through 180 degrees. Audi 4th, Mercedes 5th, Audi 6th. Looking at some of the boss laps at the bottom of the top 10 around there. Raul Diago 7th from even an 8th. Alatalo doing a fine job as the highest placed Ford GT in 9th. Of course, and that's the key thing we talked about around here, is that with the balance of performance before on circuits like this, the Ford GT really wasn't anywhere. Now, as the cars are more evenly matched, there are significantly more Ford GTs in the order. Alatalo is the best place, and it just shows that it is a viable option if you get the setup right, because the cars are so evenly matched.
The Ford, also important to remember, the Ford has also been the car that Glacier tends to run week in and week out, regardless of the circuit or the balance of performance. They often flock to that car all of Glacier Racing. You'll see purple ones with Riku, you see a yellow one, some of the more classic Glacier blue ones as well. So I'm not surprised to see the Glacier guys out here in Ford GTs, but it is definitely good to see that they're up here running strong. Hopefully these balanced performance changes week in to week out, and next week particularly at Alton Park, hopefully they can stay strong.
Yeah, Alton Park's going to be a key one, another fantastic handling circuit, so just like Suzuka, lots of long corners and switchbacks, etc. So one to certainly watch out for on that side. I know Neto Nascimento, of course, is trying to get, is one of the guys that was caught up in one of the first step incidents. I think also Ricardo Ferreira was too. He was having some problems. He's actually been in the pits for quite a while without a bonnet, it seems, on that side. As the race continues on, we're on to lap 4 now here at Suzuka. Remember, it's a 40-minute race. We're expecting around about either 20 to 21 laps as the race carries on. Race leader Frederick Rasmussen in car number 1, already up towards the Degner curves. Flicks through the first one, takes a small little dip of curb, and then uses the exit part as they head through the second apex and underneath the crossover. And now the gap between the front two at the moment is 1.3 seconds at this point. So Ricardo Castelletto, look at the previous lap times, he did lose 0.4 of a second before. In fact, no, he was quicker, in fact, by about. No, he wasn't. Sorry, getting confused. Sorry. So he was slower by about 0.4 of a second. But it looks as though that gap is roughly stabilising at about 1.3. So even though Rasmussen has got the clean air, he's not being allowed to get away too far by Ricardo.
Yeah, Frederick's doing a good job to stretch this gap, and Ricardo's going to have to do something as we're getting a replay of that starting incident. There's a couple different incidents that happen, people trying to jump the start, and then another bigger incident going through the S's. But Frederick's doing a good job to stretch this gap out, and Ricardo's going to have to do something to bring that gap down, because it's starting to reach the point where OP Freddy's just going to make himself run away. It's also important to note, Ricardo last time by was slower than Riley Preston and the Mercedes behind as they worked themselves out of 130R and into this Casio triangle. Ricardo, importantly, he doesn't want to let Frederick get away, and he doesn't want to let Riley run up behind him.
You have to keep an eye on this battle for 4th position, though, because it is starting to stack up a little bit, because Preston, as you said, with the better pace on Castelletto last time, has closed the gap in, but he's in turn also been able to slightly distance himself from that trio that's battling over 4th place. And also watch the two Mercedes in the background. That's Raul Diago and Timo Iber. They're not too far away. If these three continue to kind of hold each other up, they're going to come into play here, and it could even be a 5-way scrap for 4th place. That's always an option if you're not too careful. So as we head back up through the S's, then this is on lap 5. Still Grabowski 4th, then Melkilla into. Sorry, how stupid am I? I got it completely mixed up. It's Bruno De Carmo that went past Mika Melkilla, not the other way around. I do apologise. I'm being absolute bonehead. So it's actually Bruno De Carmo who's actually in the Mercedes. Then it's Mika Melkilla in the Audi. Get it right, Scott. And then the other
Savage.
two. Yeah, well, I'm going to be savage with myself. It's the only way. So, and then we've got Diago in 7th place and Timo Iber in 8th, with Alatalo still holding firm in 9th, and Andrea Rodriguez in 10th place. He's coming under pressure also from Nikodem Wisniewski and also Joni Heikkinen in the number 15 Mercedes. So that's a pleasing thing for me in terms of seeing so many Mercedes, in terms of not only seeing more on the field, but because of this balance of performance, again, we come back to it. They're up there and they're causing a serious threat. They're not just there just to make up the numbers. They're really up there to kind of cause some problems.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and it's just great to see that the balance of performance in general is just so strong. To see BMW, Merc, Audi, Merc, Ford, Merc. I mean, there's a lot of Mercedes, which is going to happen. The Mercedes is the most comfortable car to drive, I would make the argument of. It tends to be hard on the tires. Dennis Grabowski, we're getting word, actually off exiting Spoon Corner, and this is going to cause this stack up, Scott, and he is slow on this back straightaway on the run down to 130R. Riku Alatalo, I think, gonna make the move going into 130R. Dennis should try to just slot in right behind Riku, not really fight him here. He doesn't have the momentum. That's exactly what he does. Slots in, but he's gonna run wide a little bit again, and this might bring in Andrew Rodriguez. So Dennis might lose himself 2 spots, trying to just fight a little bit too hard and go a little bit too fast through 130R, not being patient, and there's contact to the Casio triangle. Andrew Rodriguez holds it. Great tight racing down here in the top 10. Are they gonna go 3 wide down the front straight?
Yeah, here comes Wisniewski. I think when we're watching it back, he managed to get it loose at Spoon Curb, but here comes Wisniewski. He will make it 3 abreast up towards first turn. It's going to be, looking at it, Rodriguez on the outside, Wisniewski in the middle, and then it's going to be Grabowski on the inside. He holds on. Wisniewski gets past Rodriguez, who comes back at him through the exit of the first part of the first curve. Then it's Rodriguez squeezes him out and says, "Not on your life, sunshine." Back into the S as they go once again, and the race has started before 130R. So it's now Grabowski in the Audi with the seething mob from Stuttgart behind him as they come through the S's. Then again, this is for lap 6, so it's now the 3 Mercedes all behind him, with Rodriguez, Wisniewski and Heikkinen. And also watch for as well Rafael Marquez in the mix too. He's not too far away in the number 13 machine in another Mercedes, so he could be one to kind of join the party. So they come up through the right-hander. And what's incredible here, I watched that the mistake back from Bogowski's. Rodriguez is flashing the headlights in typical distraction fashion. But through Spoon Curve, he sort of just took a bite of the first apex and got it loose, and got it over the gravel, and just managed to drive his way through. He kept it off the barriers, but it just shows that one small mistake, particularly in these very aero-focused cars, Randy, and the car can just spit you sideways and can lose you a heap of time in places.
The curb at 130R, like you said, is very sketchy. There's a few curbs throughout, I mean, just the sim in general that are like that. Blancpain at Spa is much the same way. It's if you run out a little bit wide, that curb can turn you around. And in a lot of ways, it is actually the safer option to just accept your fate and take the 1X than it is to try to fight that car, because you're talking about running wide off the circuit a few car lengths versus maybe that car kicking loose. Grabowski, though, he has a mirror full of Rodriguez that go down into 130R. Andrew doesn't make the move yet. He's going to wait. Will he maybe make a dive going into the Casio Triangle? I highly doubt it. And they're going to stay single file, this 6, 7 or so car scrap here amongst the tail end of your top 10.
Yeah, that's a good point now, because of course the other cars just behind this tree are starting to stack up behind them. Of course, watch out for Yoni Haken, Rafael Marquez, Juha-Pekka Lamy in car number 26. That's the BMW, and also not too far away in the background, watch for the two Audis of Moritz Lohner and Sergei Lorenz in the mix as well. That's towards 15th and 16th place, and they have Ivan Carmona in another of the 4G. I think he's the second highest running 4GT in the order, car number 22. So it appears to be Brazilian, I think, is in the mix there too. He runs in 17th place. So this is the battle that seems that's going on. Although I did see in the background there's a good little scrap going on between sort of 18th downwards. And we've got, I think, Harry Turunen in the 4GT has now got for company Juuso Hietala, one of his compatriots, and also Julien Offray as well in the Audi. So it's Ford, Mercedes, and then Audi, and then we've got another Mercedes in the background, Pavel Herrmann, and Jake Hewlett in there as well. This is now battles going on from 18th down to 22nd. As we said before, even though it's down sort of towards the bottom of the order, it doesn't matter. A good battle's a good battle, and these are all top drivers, and no matter where you look on this circuit round at the moment, there's battles to be had all the way down the order, and that's the thing we love about it.
Yeah, the fighting right now in this race up and down the field is great, because you're seeing huge trains of cars. Like, you'll see 5, 6 cars, then a bit of a gap, maybe 1 or 2 stragglers, and then you'll see another train of 5 to 6 cars. I mean, you have at the tail end of the top 10 basically 6 to 7 cars in a line, and then here at the tail end of the top 20, Turunen, Hielta, Offrit, Herman, Hewlett, Meyer, Nespolino, all within about half a second or so of one another. One little mistake and this group is just entirely stacked up, and who knows who benefits if that were to happen.
Just quickly going back to the battle that's going on for 9th downwards, Grabowski has managed to find a tiny bit of space now between himself and Rodriguez as this queue of cars heads towards 130R, led by the number 9. So Grabowski's managed to get himself back into the groove then, that he's managed to get over that little wobble that he had, and now he's going to try and focus in on closing back on Riku Alatala, who currently sits P8 in the highest running 4GT. One thing I want to point out as well is still nose to tail pretty close between 4th and 5th position. Bruno Carmo's not being allowed to get away by the Audi of Miko Mokila, and that's pretty impressive for Miko in terms of he's someone who can drive hard when he needs to, and with someone that experiences Bruno, of course, I've seen him before do it so many times in GTs. He's someone who, if you give him an opportunity to try and push forwards, he will take it, but Mika's also pretty feisty as well, so two very evenly matched drivers in, of course, two rather evenly matched cars. This could be a battle that goes all the way potentially towards the pit stops, and that's where it could be settled.
I mean, you're absolutely right, especially here at a track like this. You can save a decent amount of gas because you do have some long straights here where you can really abuse the draft, and by doing that, you save yourself a little bit of fuel. So if you're someone like Miko Mokila sitting behind Bruno De Carmo, you see the fact that your pace is relatively equal, probably not going to be able to get by Bruno here in the next 3 to 4 laps. Just sit there, take what draft you can, and try to shorten your pit stop as much as you can. Important to note, there is actually a lap car here in amongst this group. That's Thomas Arendz. That's not actually Frederick in that BMW. It's just one of his teammates, but he's going to let basically the entire field go. Smart move by him. And he's literally just stopped on the exit of the hairpin, letting the whole train of cars go by.
Yeah, well done, Thomas. That's always good driving, of course, when they see the faster cars coming, they respect the blue flag. So I take my proverbial hat off to Thomas for making sure he's kept himself pretty clean. Now back towards the front, we talked about Rasmussen for a second. Again, that gap is stabilised. These two are... they've almost inadvertently worked together in terms of they're both pulling away from the rest of the field at the same rate. Looking at their lap times, they are incredibly evenly matched. In fact, last time around, Ricardo Castelletto was 1/10 of a second quicker on that last lap. They're both punching in low 157s consistently. 157.2 for the last lap on Rasmussen compared to 157.1 for Castelletto. They'll come across again. Let's check the gap this time around. It's a 157.2 for Rasmussen and 157.2. So look at that. Half a tenth in it. These two in the BMWs, maybe different teams. They may be sort of real adversaries. But in terms of lap pace, Randy, absolutely identical. This is what consistency is all about.
And this has been a fight that's happened amongst this championship. I mean, since week one, we've seen Frederick and Ricardo. Whenever Ricardo turns up, whenever Frederick turns up, they fight here amongst the front. The gap will get stretched out to about this point, and then they'll just start swapping lap times back and forth, back and forth. Generally, Dennis Grabowski is normally in amongst the mix as well, but he's had a couple incidents, a couple mistakes this race, and that shuffled him down the order. But still, your top two of Rasmussen and Ricardo Castelletto, that has been the battle up towards the front throughout this season of Race Spot Friday primetime.
Remember, we're expecting pit stops around lap 13, so you're going to see cars calling to pit lane, ideally, in around about 4 laps' time or so. So keep on watching to see who is going to be the one that blinks first. Sometimes it is one of the leaders, sometimes someone down the pack will be the guinea pig and decide to make the stop early on to try and run a little bit longer into their second stint to try and hopefully just do that. And maybe that could have been a case of that they may just be holding back to save the tyres a bit on the slightly lighter fuel load. Then once they've got it, they can push a bit harder towards the end. Different runs and different strategies. That's what is great about the Blancpain iRacing Sprint Series here. The fact that it is just fuel only, so there's different strategies. Not only, Randy, for just how much fuel you start with and how much you run with until the end, but also what effect that has on your tyres. Do you go lighter, stop early, but have use the tyres a little bit more in the first stint, and of course then reserve a bit more with the higher fuel load, or just try and balance it easier, or do you do vice versa? It's a real sort of numbers and strategy game when it comes to picking what you do with your tyres, but also how you play the fuel game when it comes to pit stops.
Well, you have to make the car last that full 40 minutes regardless of what you do, and it is just sort of like you said, there can be a bit of pickiness in terms of what you want to do. You come down early, but when you come down early, your car is going to be heavier than your competition while you're out there, so it's probably going to be slower, but if there's traffic out in front of you, sometimes that clean track can be worth more than the 7 or 8 gallons worth of fuel that you might add on. So it is just sort of a situation of, it's almost a buy your seat of your pants. You don't want to just go in with the race and say, oh, I'm definitely going to pit at this time. You have to be somewhat flexible. If you're out there on the track, get a bunch of traffic, maybe, there's people just fighting for position way too hard in front of you and they're holding you up, pit 2 or 3 laps early, get yourself that clear track, put in a couple good clean laps, and when they come down pit road, maybe you jump them. Right now we're seeing a great battle, though, between the 24, the 8, and the 22. That's Morty's Lohner, Sergi Lorenz, and Ivan Carmona.
Yeah, that's the one I'm currently focusing on right now. Lohner and Lorenz and the pair of Audis been chased down hard by the 4GT of Carmona. Again, very pleasing to see the 4GT is still fighting hard and fighting strong, and there's a lot of cars. There's a few more drivers choosing the Ford in this one, thanks to the balance of performance that's helped it out. But looking pretty close here. Lohner's getting the clean air, whilst Lorenz has got to sit in the turbulent air that Moritz is providing in front as they head through the Degna curves pretty much all together. Up towards the second apex and out of it once again. Let's see what Sergey's got up his sleeve here as he's close a little bit more on the exit up towards the hairpin. He won't make a dive, I don't think, up here. No, he doesn't, because Moritz has got the line covered, although Sergey gets a good run through the corner. Decent enough exit for Moritz to kind of hold him off at this point in time, but now as they head up through the long right-hander up to, and then round to the double apex of Spoon Curve, even Carmona just sat there thinking, just keep going amongst yourselves, boys, because if one of you two slips up, he's going to be all over that like a rash, effectively. It's a case of waiting for these guys to try and slip up or make a mistake, and once it's there, bang, get a move in, and you're up 1 or potentially 2 positions if they both come to blows.
You're absolutely right, and this is one of those spots where actually, if I was Ivan Carmona, I would actually probably pit coming to this lap, because yeah, he's running about a half second quicker than both Sergi Lorenz and Mortiz Lohner, but this is a difficult place to pass at. Suzuka is not the greatest place to really put moves on unless it's an aggressive dive bomb. You have turn 1 can be a pretty good move if you can get a good run out of the chicane, but besides that, so many straightaways that aren't really straight. And actually, as I say that, I'm going to edit that because Sergi Lorenz decides to come in. So if you're Carmona, you actually want to stay out in that case. You're running quicker than the competition that was in front of you, and he just got out of the way. Now abuse that draft of Lohner out in front in that Audi, try to reel that gap in, and you should be able to pass at least that car that just came down pit road.
Whilst that was happening, I just noticed something. Rodriguez has passed Grabowski now. I actually saw the end of that. I saw Grabowski was a little bit wide on the exit the first part of the turn, but that change actually came. It came down the pit straight. We can get a replay of that and that one on the cameras. Rodriguez got a good run off the final corner, drafted the back of the Audi up towards turn 1, and they just simply, bravely, just swept around the outside. That is a brave and bold move from Andrea Rodriguez. I've seen the outside pass I saw from Raul Diago, that was at Le Mans. That is an equally fantastic pass. He simply got the draft. That's also shades of Raikkonen and Fisichella at Suzuka 2005. That was a brilliant move. Just Andrea Rodriguez thought, you know what, screw this. I'm going around the outside. If you're going to try and go with me, either go with me or deal with it.
Yeah, the outside of turn 1 and 2 could be a really sketchy place to try to make a move, but that move was put on, and the thing is that's important is that Rodriguez dedicated himself to it. He didn't really go in with the, I want to make the move, but I might get taken out. He didn't hesitate. He said, I'm going to make the move, and there's going to be a space there because Dennis is going to give it to me. If he had driven with any less dedication towards making that pass, I don't think he would have made it work.
Yeah, very true. So that is now him up to 9th position then, another spot gained. Rasmussen carries on in pit lane. We've still got a couple more laps until we expect the front runners in. No movement from the two BMWs, neither from Riley Preston nor Bruno De Carlo. Mika Malkilla is in the mix as well. Raul Diago currently 6th. There is a good scrap going on, however, but for 7th place now. This is the Mercedes of Timo Iverden coming under pressure now from Riku Alatalo. So this is great to see the Ford is taking it to the Mercedes here as they come down the straight. Then we've got the seething mob behind being led by Rodriguez with Grabowski, Wisniewski and Heikkinen battling over 9th to 12th. Onto lap 12 here at Suzuka. Just gone past over the halfway distance. And as they head back up through the S's here, the question now has to be, again, the gap has stabilised between the top two at 1.4. They're trading lap times in terms of who's quicker. Last time it was Rasmussen here. Is this genuinely these guys just going back and forth and playing a little bit, or are they really going that hard in terms of trading the advantage and who's got the better lap time depending on how you use the clean air you've got?
Oh, they're definitely pushing extremely hard. I mean, for these guys, it's definitely bragging rights in this championship. Frederick Rasmussen, I'm sure he adores the fact that he wins these races every single week. I don't think we've seen Frederick actually lose a race now that I think about it. I'm trying to remember if he won last week out at Road America. I'll be honest, I was so distracted with Le Mans that I completely forgot I commentated that race at Road America. But no, these guys are all, I mean, they are pushing hard. It's definitely bragging rights in amongst these guys because these are people that compete with one another in the top-end GT championships in this championship. The Blancpain GT World Championship, which actually qualifiers starting next week for, is going to be intense as well. But as we talk, Riku Alatalo has reeled in Timo Iverden, which I think that heavy Mercedes is starting to eat up its tires just a little bit. That Ford a little bit lighter, maybe a little bit better on his tires due to the mid-engine layout as well. He's starting to slowly reel him in the tail end of this race. We're expecting pit stops soon as well.
Yep, the low-slung, slippery Ford GT just tucking underneath the Mercedes now up towards 130R. Riku won't make a move through the left-hander, but he will try and set him up as Rasmussen does indeed pit, as also does Castronetto. So the two leaders are in. Preston carries on, then it will take over the race lead. What about Bruno De Carlo? He's in. Malkilla carries on. Raul Diago is in. Timo Iverden is in. Riku Alatalo is not. He stays out. So the cars that are staying out then are going to be Riley Preston, also Mika Malkilla up now into effectively 2nd place, and Riku Alatalo is staying in 3rd. Rodriguez has stayed out, so is Grabowski, so Wisniewski's in. Marquez looks to be in as well. No, he stayed out as Marquez. Pekka Lami's in as well. More cars down pit lane in the background as well. Lona's stayed out, Carmona's stayed out, and Hietala is in. Offray remains on track. So pretty much, as we said, about lap 13, 12, 13, the pit stop started earliest, Randy, and again, it almost looks like, in the UK, it's sort of the M25 at rush hour rather than like a regular pit lane.
Well, I'm about 4,000 miles away from the M25, so I'm not actually sure what it looks like during rush hour, but I mean, that pit lane was very busy, and you know, unfortunately, it would have been interesting to see if Ricardo had been able to stretch it another lap, whether or not he might have been able to jump Frederick. But there are those handful of drivers that did stay out that time by, and because of that, those battles in amongst your mid-pack are going to get shaken up because of that. Likes of Rodriguez, Grabowski, Alatalo, Malkilla, and Preston, they're going to definitely benefit a lot by the fact that they're going this extra lap. I mean, that's about a gallon worth of fuel here in this championship for those on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean, approximately 4 liters. So, and that is a considerable amount of time, about 1 to 2 seconds in terms of fill rate there. And that can be jumping 1, 2, and with a lot of these trains, maybe even 3 to 4 cars.
Yeah, very true. Malkilla is still in 2nd place at this point in time, so we'll have to wait and see if these guys both here, Preston and Malkilla, are going to be diving right onto pit lane. Preston then Brings the big Mercedes up into the Casio triangle for the 13th time. I'm waiting for him to pull off to the right, hold to the right-hand side. Indeed he does. So Preston's in. And so is Mel Killer. So leaders, these two are into the pit lane. I expect Bruno De Carmo to be in... Well, he's actually just heading through the complex right now. We're now waiting for Rasmussen and Castellado, who are already up towards 130R. They are going to head to, let's see what their pit stop is like. They're also changing one of the lapped cars in front, which looks to me is Julian Offray, who is now going to be a lap down. But I have to say one thing, Randy, as they come onto the pit straight, I'm not seeing things. That looks to me as if Riccardo Castelletto, he gained time on Rasmussen in that pit stop. Rasmussen didn't get a good enough, clean enough pit stop that he would have liked. And as a result, that's cost him dearly because he's right underneath him now as they come up towards turn 1.
That could have just simply been fuel rates. I mean, Ricciardo may have been saving gas behind, and because of that may have had a shorter stop, because that gap has come down quite considerably. Also might be Frederick just, Ricciardo knows that he can't reel in Frederick in terms of pace. Maybe he's risking it on his fuel. Maybe he underfilled that car slightly and is going to try to stretch it to the end, whereas Frederick maybe took a safer number because he knows he has the pace on Ricciardo. So it might be just there as well. There could be 2 or 3 ways that gap could have came down. Either way, I think Frederick will likely be able to hold off Ricciardo, but now that Ricciardo's there in the draft, I'm really interested to see whether or not he's able to hold on and make something of this.
So what's also interesting as well, whilst you were talking about that, I was keeping an eye on what was happening with Rico Alatalo. He has leapfrogged the Mercedes behind him, Timo Even. He's leapfrogged him in the pit stops. He just managed to squeeze out in front of him before they got to turn 1. So that is a key crucial move for Alatalo. A superb lap to get himself up and underneath the Mercedes, and that's got him past in the pit stops. That's the power of strategy, how good it can be. If you can run your car hard enough, he stuck right with him. When he pitted, that allowed him to he stayed that extra lap, made the pit stop, and used the extra lap to that advantage. He pushed hard with the clean air that he had, and because of that, he was able to make the leapfrog. So that is a great, brilliant move. We'll see exactly where he is once the pit stops have all shaken out and the field sort of comes back around again. Now watching on to see exactly how Frederick Rasmussen is going to deal with the now increased pressure from Riccardo Castelletto. Down the back straight, we're on lap 14 here at Suzuka. This is round 8 of season 4 of the 2016 iRacing Blancpain Sprint Series on Racebot TV, Friday night prime time. They head up towards the Casio triangle once again. Rasmussen, Riccardo Castelletto. They're coming up to lap Thomas Ahrens, who so graciously moved out the way. He actually does more than that. He dives into the pit lane, so he goes to make his stop on that one. Rasmussen now's got to try and take advantage of the fact he's got completely clean air, but Riccardo Castelletto, looking at the way he's keeping close, I reckon he smells blood. He wants a victory here.
Yeah, and he has this draft down this long front straightaway, and with that draft, he's about 3 to 4 miles an hour quicker, and look at the way he closes in through 1 and 2 on the brakes, but Frederick a little bit better on the exit, simply stretches that gap back out through corners number 1 and 2. Ricciardo, though, this is where he's going to be hurting, just tucked right underneath the rear wing of Frederick Rasmussen. All of that aero push is going to be hurting him through the S's, and look, Frederick's able to run a little bit tighter on all these apexes, Ricciardo a little bit wider because of that.
Also, one thing to note as well in the pit stops, as everything's starting to shake out a bit more now, Riley Preston's fallen away even further to these two in front. He's now back by about 5.5 seconds or so. But also what's quite crucial is that not only has the battle for 4th and 5th closed in a bit more, but it's also changed up a little bit because Moncilla has managed to get back in front of Bruno De Carmo. So the Audi's managed to leapfrog the Mercedes. Lots of sort of position switching in the pit stops. Some great work for strategy here. And also want to watch out for as well, because Raul Diago currently still holds 6th position, but now Rico Alatalo, he's now starting to sort of pull Timo Even along with him, and I wonder if these two continue at the pace they're running at, Randy, with the way the Ford GT cuts through the air, and of course with Even getting almost a free toe behind him, I wonder if they also almost inadvertently start to work together, and potentially if they do, Diago could be in trouble here.
Yeah, he really could. So Raul Diago has to be very, very cautious. But at the same point, like you said earlier, we had that fantastic move from Raul at Le Mans. So, you can't really count Raul out just yet. He's definitely a very quick driver, and he can dedicate to passes when needed be.
Back towards the leaders. Of course, remember they were 1.4 seconds separate. It's not that anymore. You can see that it's pretty much 0.4 seconds. So, effectively, thanks to the efficient pit work and, of course, his chosen strategy, Castelletto gained practically a full second in the pit stops. So he's now right underneath him as they come back down towards the first turn. And also, I'm just keeping an eye on what's going on in that battle for 4th in the background between Moncilla and De Carmo. They're still holding pretty close with Preston not too far ahead of them. Again, just as you mentioned, Randy, they're so close. Castelletto is so good in that first couple of corners. His car really works that little bit better than Rasmussen's does. Then through the S's again. His car doesn't seem to be too fussed about the turbulent air coming off the back of Rasmussen's car. He seems to handle it pretty well, so it seems that Rasmussen's the one that's kind of trying to lead him a merry dance. But so far, Castelletto's not biting. He's effectively running his own race, keeping a really good pace at this point, and actually forcing Rasmussen to work harder than really Castelletto needs to.
But look at the way that Frederick's able to stretch this gap here through this first couple sectors here. As they come into the Degners, Ricciardo does a good job of reeling it back in, but through the S's, up the hill, the Dunlop S, and then through the first Degner, Frederick is, I think, quicker than Ricciardo Castelletto is behind. Where Ricciardo needs to be strong, though, is out of that Casio triangle. He needs to be exceptional coming out of that chicane to be able to get the run on Frederick, because I don't think he has the top end to be able to just catch Frederick and make a move in the draft. He needs to get some sort of run coming through that chicane, if not going into the chicane and putting on some sort of dive bomb to try to get by that core sim racing BMW of Frederick Rasmussen.
Tell you what, the run through Spoon Curve was pretty decent indeed, up through the run up back towards 130R. A good line for Castelletto. I think he turned a little bit tighter than Rasmussen did, took a little bit more bite of curb on the first part of the apex, but he was able just to try and tag along with him. Back through 130R, the very high speed left-hander. To open it out a bit more so it made it even faster, a little bit more even safer, if you like. Up through the Casio triangle. Let's see the run he gets here. Ricciardo clouted the curb a little bit too much. That's probably just caused him to take a wider run through the final corner. He's lost the draft a little bit as they come down the back of the pit straight again. We're on lap 17. We've got less than 10 minutes to go here, so Castelletto, he's not running out of time too much. He's still got a couple of minutes, or a couple more laps to kind of see what he wants to do. He's slightly wider on the first part to try and get a slingshot on the exit of the first curve. But the trouble is, Randy, he comes to the S's, and because it's so hard to pass here, it's almost as if he's closing in on that part of the course for nothing. He needs to be effectively alongside or really up there to try and force a mistake from Rasmussen if he wants that advantage in the first two turns to really come good.
Exactly, he needs to just, it is, this entire racetrack is such, I mean, it's just single file. There's no sort of, you can't duck a nose out to try to look for clean air. You can't maybe run a quote-unquote high line or a different line. There really is a single groove around this entire racetrack, which is great if you're able to get yourself in position to be able to make a pass, because it almost surely means that you're able to get that move done. But if you can't get yourself quite close enough, it means that you're just kind of stuck in the dirty air, and there's really not much you can do. The only place you can be somewhat flexible on your line is through that hairpin, and I think Frederick just looks quicker there. That core BMW looks better coming out of those slow corners than the Radicals one does.
Looking back to the battle for 16th positioning, Andrea Rodriguez has lost a lot of time, maybe in the pit stops or elsewhere. He now finds himself battling with Ivan Carmona in the Ford GT. They're really nose to tail, and also they've got Yuso Hietala for company in number 19. This is over only, as you said, it's only 16th, 17th and 18th, but they're still fighting as hard as ever. Rodriguez just has a big look up the inside. Oh, there was contact, nudges the back of the Ford GT. Carmona runs wide, now that gives Hietala a chance to get around him, and then Carmona says, "Are you kidding me? That's not going to happen at all." Just uses the fantastic mid-engine balance of the 4GT, shoots straight back past and says, "Deal with that one, if you like," as they come back towards Spoon Curve. And I think because of that tap, I wonder, Randy, Evan's going to be fired up there. He won't stand for that for much longer. If he can get a good enough exit off the back of it, he will have Andrea as quick as he can, because he will be absolutely, the red mist might descend after that bit of contact at the hairpin.
I was actually somewhat surprised because Ivan had the run going into Spoon, and I think he could have slaughtered up the inside of Andre Rodriguez after that Andre gave him that little bit of tap down at the hairpin. I certainly wouldn't have been as patient as Ivan was. If I would have seen that door open, I surely would have slung it up the inside of Spoon Curve, but probably smarter racing from Ivan than it would have been from me, and he's just sort of hounding the back of that Mercedes at the moment. He knows that his Ford should be better in a straight line. I think turn one might be his opportunity, but not quite yet. Didn't quite get the run that he would have wanted.
Yeah, he's got a small toe down the pit straight up towards the first couple of corners. They head to the very high-speed double apex right-hander. He does close in through there, so that 4GT looking very comfortable on that first two turns. Let's see what he can do through the S's then, up to the first part through a left-hander. And Rodriguez is just about holding station. But Carmona's got a decent car underneath him, of course, that number 22 4GT working well. Rodriguez a bit too deep through the last apex, and then as he come back through the top of the hill and the exit the S's and round up through towards the Denia curves again. Carmona's doing a good job here to stay with him. Just though on the exit there, Rodriguez felt a bit more comfortable than he did a couple of corners ago. Even so, it's pretty evenly matched between these three, and especially the first part there, Rodriguez flew through there and actually left Carmona a little bit behind. So now, rather than chasing down Rodriguez and putting him under pressure around, he's now coming under pressure himself, and you see here Talas to come back into the hairpin.
Yeah, Rodriguez is doing a great job to stretch this gap, and Ivan actually gets really loose exiting that hairpin, and that's going to give Andrew the ability to just stretch this gap even more. And Husi Attila behind just gets caught up. There wasn't an incident, but he's going to be just hemorrhaging time because of that mistake from Ivan. I'm sure that Mercedes behind of Huso Hiltila, seeing Ivan struggle right now, he's going to want to put a move on at some point. As they work through Spoon, that Mercedes just looks better through the corner. The Ford got a better run off. Let's see, though, if Huso can get the run down this straightaway with the draft, maybe sling it up the inside in a 130R or the Casio Triangle.
We'll keep our eyes on that battle as it continues to progress. Meanwhile, back at the front, it's come out a little bit more. It's 0.7 of a second between Rasmussen and Castelletto on lap 19 of the iRacing Blancpain Sprint Series. We've currently gone past, well, now, the less than 5 minutes to go mark, so we've got maybe another 2 or 3 laps to go. We said about 2021. But on that side, as they come back into top of the hill, and back into the complex in this mix as well. And also the battle that's continuing to go on as we keep looking at Rodriguez, Carmona, and Hietala over 16th, 17th, and 18th.
Also, Riku and Timu have caught Raul Diago.
Yes, they have. So, as we said, those two actually inadvertently working together, and Diago actually suffering from the fact that yes, he's got clean air, but he hasn't made the most of it, whereas Alatalo really has, and he's starting to close that back in, and again he's brought Timu Evenen with him, so that is really working to his advantage. So we said that Diago might be in trouble here, and it looks as though with the way that these two have closed in, that proclamation is about to come true very quickly indeed. So up through the right hander they come once again, through the very long high-speed curve, up towards the Spoon curve, etc. And under brakes again. And I'll tell you, it does close a bit more. Let's see what I have to wait as they come onto the back straight to see what kind of straight line speed he's got. But again, the Ford GT's loving these long corners. It seems to be really working well. And maybe it's going to be thinking something. Oh, well, that's actually, looking at that, Diago was a little bit loose on the exit, or at least he took too much curb or put a couple of wheels off the road. Alatali with a great slipstream down the back straight up towards 130R. Up through the left-hander they come again. We've now got about 2 laps to go now in this race, up towards the Casio Triangle. What can Alatalo do under brakes? Closes in, Evenen watches on. It's still, this is over 6th, 7th and 8th as they come onto the penultimate lap of this 8th round of the Season 4 of the 2016 iRacing Blancpain Sprint Series. You can see already, Diago can sense it coming. He sweeps to the pits wall to try and prevent any attack from Alatalo, to try and close off the inside line, sweeps back to the outside to take the racing line. This could be possibly Raul Diago here, but the thing is though, Alatalo's got the better in terms of mind games, because the fact that he swept across to the wall says to me that effectively Raul feels as though he's in trouble. He's not safe in that Mercedes at all.
He's definitely not safe. Last time by, though, as well, just monitoring our leaders, Ricardo Castelletto was 2/10 quicker than Frederick Rasmussen. It was a half-second gap at the line, though, but Frederick not quite out of the woods just yet. Looking back now down towards this battle for 6th, 7th, and 8th, Rico Alatalo closes on the back of that Mercedes of Raul Diago as they go into the Degners. Riku's doing all he can to provide pressure, but isn't going to be enough.
Have to wait and see. Back through the Degners again. And still Diago is just about holding on as Alatalo gets a little bit loose on the exit, the second part of the Degner curve. Even just keeping a watching brief at this point, up towards the hairpin. I'm just keeping tabs also on some of the gaps towards the leaders. It's still about half a second to Rasmussen as Alatalo gets a good run off the exit of the hairpin, because it was a little bit loose from Diago. So rather than Diago being the hunter 2 weeks ago at Le Mans, he's now the hunted at Suzuka, and here comes Alatalo to really try and apply the pressure. He looks towards the inside, tries to force the move. There's contact, and around goes Diago. Oh, well, he had to try, didn't he? But unfortunately, it didn't come off, and Diago finds himself in the gravel trap, and that's lost him 2 spots.
That was a really over-aggressive move from Riku, I think, there. He didn't have any overlap. He broke way, way deeper, and Raul was already running a very narrow line into Spoon Curve. I mean, there was only about a lane there that Riku had to use to try to put that move on. I don't think there's any way that Riku makes that move stick, even if he does pull alongside, unless Raul just jumps out of the way. I think Riku went a little too far there, pushing him out of the way.
Yeah, looking at the replay, he made that aggressive move up the inside, and Diago had pretty much his car up towards the apex, and unfortunately both cars met in the middle, and that saw Diago as the one that really lost out. Back towards the front then, it's now the last lap of the race. Rasmussen is still leading from Castelletto. The back gap is now down to under half a second. Castelletto then has got one more tour of the 3.61 mile Suzuka International Racing Course to try and get this move done, to try and force a mistake from Rasmussen. Then again, trying to find a mistake from Rasmussen is almost like trying to find a needle in a haystack. It's all virtually impossible. Up to the Denia curves again for the final time. It looks as though, what do you reckon, Randy? Any chance at all that Ricciardo's going to do this, or do you think Frederick's got it covered?
It's going to all depend on Spoon Curve, I think. Frederick has to get a good run out of Spoon, and if he's able to do that, I don't think there's any way Ricciardo Castelletto will be able to bring it back. However, if Frederick hiccups a little bit coming out of Spoon Curve, a little bit oversteer, maybe a little bit understeer, Ricciardo might just have the opportunity to YOLO that car down into 130R or into the Casio Triangle. Well,
this is the key corner. As you mentioned, here it comes, Spoon Curve. Looking at the run, he gets off it, and I think Rasmussen's a bit too comfortable on that side there. Yeah, so it looks as though it possibly could be game over, although it's never the case until they get to the checkered flag. Onto the back straight then for the final time, over the crossover, through 130R. Rasmussen is pretty much the king of Blancpain at the moment. Any car he steps into, he's always rapid, and effectively he is justifying the number one on the side of the door. Castelletto will try and close in as best he can under the Casio Triangle, and even though he's applied the pressure all race long, still no one can seem to overhaul the man that's currently in front of him. Out of the final corner, it'll be another race victory, a flash of the headlights and another checkered flag. Rasmussen wins round 8 at Suzuka. Castelletto pressed him hard up until less than half a second at the flag. As for the rest of the cars coming through, Riley Preston a very strong third place. He'll be very happy with that, as is Mel Killer for fourth position.
Still got to fight. Carmona's got his mirror full of Mercedes. Everyone else in front of him pretty much strung out. They come out of Spoon right now, and Carmona has two Mercs behind him. One of Marcus Meyer, and the first one in line is Huso Hiltila, and Huso is really close on the run into 130R as he pulls out to the left.
Here he comes, tries to make the move. Carmona's got the lines he needs to do it. He tries to get the switch back on the exit, up towards Casio Triangle. Is there going to be a last-ditch move from Hirtala? He will try possibly up the inside, but he can't get it done. Here comes also Marcus Meyer to try and make an attack. And despite Yuso's best efforts, Carmona will hold on for 17th place. It'll be Hirtala 18th, Marcus Meyer 19th. A brilliant battle towards the bottom of the top 20. A couple of the cars a little bit sideways on the split straight after they finished their races. And across the line come also Luigi Nespolino, Julian Offray, Pavel Herman in the mix as well. Across the line they come to finish, but the man they all had to beat was car number 1, and that is P number 1 once again for Frederick Rasmussen. A fantastic race from start to finish. Castelletto did press him hard in the second half, managed to push him a little bit harder, but in the end Rasmussen, once again Randy, is the king of Blancpain, and effectively, well, nothing else you can say about from the fact that he's done it again.
Yeah, we've seen Frederick be absolutely phenomenal over the course of this sprint race championship. He just gets himself out in front, gets himself some clean air, and he just essentially is able to run away when he's able to run the cars he's into that he likes. He struggled a little bit last week having to run the Mercedes, what with the balance of performance hiccup and everything, but Frederick has been besides that strong in this championship, and he was actually really strong in the final two races of that Blancpain GT World Championship as well at Imola and the Nürburgring. I look forward to seeing this group next season with Isaac Price.
Yeah, Ricardo Castelletto actually mentioning that it was the dirty air was disturbing him on the first few laps, so that was the problem in terms of why he couldn't actually get himself as close as he did, but he managed to cope with it better in the second half of the race and get himself a second place. But as we go to the results, it was the man once again who has best of the field, as he normally tends to do whenever he races. Frederick Rasmussen does indeed get the victory by only just under half a second from Ricardo Castelletto in second place. Riley Preston rounds out the podium in third, with Mika Melkiller fourth, Bruno De Carmo rounding out the top 5. Ricky Alatalo just held on to Team Evening by about 0.3 of a second for 6th. Then it's Joni Haken, Raul Diago, Dennis Karofsky down in 10th, a lowly 10th as well in that mix. Then it's 11th place for Rafael Marquez, Juha Pekka-Lamy 12th, Moritz Lone in 13th, Sergei Lorenz 14th, and Nikodem Wisniewski in 15th. Andrea Rodriguez ends up 16th after being a prominent figure just in the bottom of the top 10 for most of the race. Ivan Carmona held on to that fantastic 17th place ahead of Yuso Hirtala and Marcus Meyer, with Luigi Nespolino rounding out the top 20. And the rest of the field populated by Julian Offray, Pavel Herman, Jake Hewlett, Bruno Fontalba, Andy Pers, Harry Turunen and Gianni Vecchio, with Thomas Arendt and Nita Nascimento a lap down, and Ricardo Ferreira the only man not to finish the race. 29 cars saw the flag, and it was a fantastic race as well in the mix for lap times. The best lap times I'm trying to find in the mix, I think Rasmussen was in the race. His best race was his second lap. 157.091 was his best lap. I suspect possibly that was the fastest lap of the race as well.
I believe it was. Yep, 57.091, the quickest lap of the race. So very well done by Rasmussen there to be able to get himself that. I mean, that's sort of the trio of perfection, isn't it? Pole, fastest lap, and the race win.
That's the Grand Slam, and he's done it once again. So well done, of course, to our top three, to Frederick Rasmussen, to Riccardo Castillejo, and to Riley Preston. And that's going to wrap it up for another Blancpain Sprint Series broadcast once again. Of course, it's going to be next week to, I have to say, one of my personal favourite circuits in the UK, and that is the majestic Oulton Park. What a driver circuit. Do not miss that as we head into the final third of the season. Also, more iRacing action on Racebot TV. We've got Group B of the World Cup of iRacing tomorrow with Will Vincent and Jake Sperry. Then on Sunday, a double whammy with Classic IndyCar Series from Auto Club, and we've got Skip Barber 2K World Cup from Watkins Glen. All of that to come on the mix over the weekend, tomorrow and Sunday. Check out racebot.tv and also iRacing Live for all the schedules. But for myself, Scott Woodris, from Randy Chenworth and from Hugo Luis on cameras, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week for more action from the iRacing Blancpain Sprint Series on iRacing Live and Racebot TV. Thanks for watching.